Welcome to the Achieve Workplace Culture podcast, where we look at all things related to workplace culture and try to help you find actionable ways to change, improve, sustain your workplace culture. I'm here with my co-hosts, Chris Downey and Wendy Lowen. In a word, how are you two feeling about today's podcast?
I'm feeling curious about today's podcast.
Ooh. I'm not going to ask you any questions about that, even though I'm curious about your word, curious. I am feeling very free.
Free. Huh. Interested for me, really interested, because today we're going to talk about leadership lessons from unlikely places. We're going to think about where is it that we can find source material to develop ourselves that isn't in the traditional places. So I want to start by actually turning to you, Wendy. A few years ago, you wrote a article / blog that ended up making its way into a book that we wrote together by the same name, Leadership Lessons from Unlikely Places. And I remember you talking something about a movie. I don't know if you want to start us with that. But
yeah, so that chapter was based on the collapse of a mine in Chile in 2010, and it's called the 33. And this group of miners are locked down underground for 69 days, 17 of which they have no contact with the outside world. And what ends up happening is that group finds a way to thrive and to survive. So they survive, but they also found a way to survive and thrive in that environment. And there's a leader that emerged, and he provided inspiration, he provided a little bit of fun, he provided structure, he encouraged communication. And I remember at the end of that movie hopping into bed and my husband telling me, stop talking about the movie, because it just gave me so many ideas around leadership and what's important. And my takeaway from that was there are so many places that we as leaders can learn. Leadership training is one, feedback from each other, but if we're paying attention, there's opportunities to learn all over. And I think about the research that we did for Don't Blame the Lettuce. One of the things we heard consistently was leaders don't have enough time. And so when we're open and our eyes are paying attention and we're curious about the world around us, there's lots of opportunities to learn. If there's time, I'll share a small little example of something that happened this last weekend while I was cleaning up some bushes in the backyard.
Well, I think there's time you're going to have to share.
Time.
You can't drop something like that.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Well, I was trimming bushes late in the year, I have to admit. Let's hope they're going to survive the winter.
Yes.
But I'm out there and I love geese. I love the sound of geese. I move aside as they're flying over for other reasons. But so there's this big, geese flying over, and I'm looking at them and they're honking, and it was just this moment of breathing and reflecting. And then I went back to trimming, and then I heard some more little squawk, squawk, squawks. And I see this tiny little trail of geese coming up from behind. And I look ahead, and there's two geese who have turned around and are circling back to join this smaller group. And I thought, what a powerful example of leaders, geese, taking care, people falling behind. What's our role? We circle back, we support, we join. We don't just keep plowing ahead. So that was my leadership lesson.
I love it. And I think you're highlighting something there, Wendy, that there are leadership lessons all around us all of the time. And in some cases, we're getting them not from a leader per se, just by observing what is going on. And the interesting thing I like about that is adopting a mindset of looking around and saying, what can I learn from what I'm seeing out there? And that's a different way of looking at the world, actually. What examples are there? I think we see it all the time. We see it. We watch children operate together. We see examples or learnings that we can take away around inclusion, around just being. I see that as an example. My daughter goes to school. She's gone to school with the same kids for a number of years, and they're so dialed in on how each other's doing. They just walk up and hug each other if someone seems off without even asking a question. I'm not saying we do it in the workplace, but what that does tell me is that's about connection and the importance of that. And that hug can shift a bad day and make a good day without even words. So I think we are seeing those examples all over the place. And I'm curious, Eric, have you seen, has there been something that you've seen out in the world that's really popped for you?
Yeah, well, like you said, Wendy, I feel like when one pays attention, there are leadership lessons everywhere. And I read a lot of fiction.
Okay.
Which sometimes I feel a little embarrassed about because I feel like I should be reading all of these leadership books, which I read some of, but I read more fiction. And when I really think about it, I think part of why I do that is it opens up worlds in my mind and it helps me explore ideas that might not come from traditional, leadership related books because there's all kinds of situational stuff that's happening in these books where there are leaders trying to figure out ways to address them. And so I read a series of books, but one of them was called Six of Crows not too long ago. It's about a fictional gang of young thieves, like in the 18, 20, kind of pretty young, set in a fictionalized Amsterdam. And I mean, they're kind of nasty pieces of work, these people. But what I noticed about leadership in the book, which I think rings true in real life, is that people were following those who had vision and who had courage. Mm-hmm. And those two things, I don't often hear people talking about vision and courage together. I hear people talking about vision. I hear people thinking about, talking about lots of things, but I don't hear often those two words together, vision and courage. And so, that opens up in my mind a way to think, in what ways can we courageously face the issues or the barriers or the obstacles or the things that we're trying to do in this organization? So it puts a question into my mind, or it shows me another way of thinking about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Eric, I don't think you should apologize for reading fiction. I think it just builds so much empathy because you enter the experience, the thoughts of somebody else that can completely shift your perspective. Mm-hmm. And even reading the other characters, you realize how they might not fully understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think fiction is a brilliant way to learn about the world and human dynamics and the psyche of people.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing wrong with that. I think on the subject of what we're even talking about is we can, what I'm really excited about, I said my word to start off was curious about this conversation, but it's now shifted more to excitement about there is just so much learning that's out there that comes from non-traditional sources, and it's available to us. But always, that what I really enjoy about this is, I remember I probably shared this at some point in one of our casts in the past. I remember one of my early leadership development engagements I was doing with an organization. We were working with senior leaders for half the week and new leaders for the other half of the week. And these new leaders were just filled with questions. And we'd gotten into some how to handle performance issues discussion. And it just dawned on me that they were younger, it turned out, but just younger leaders. They hadn't yet been tainted with the way we've done things traditionally. And they had this curiosity about performance and why would someone not be performing well as opposed to judging their performance. And they came to see me after, or we're on break. And I remember their names were Justin and Daisy. And they asked, can you have some more examples of what you've done in the past? And I remember realizing, I said to them, look, I'll share some stories with you. Maybe you can glean something from this. But I want to be clear. Don't assume that everyone that's done it before you has done it right.
Yeah.
And feel free to challenge that. And I think, Eric, what I like so much about that idea about whether it's from fiction or watching children play in a schoolyard or watching the geese is don't look at a traditional source for it. You might be inspired by something that's far from the traditional, but can really impact a significant change in how you do it. And the cool thing is that's all free stuff. Well, maybe you probably paid a couple bucks for the book that you bought, but it might have been from the library too. Who knows? It's available to us. And I love the idea of not looking at traditional sources, right? Because sometimes we do actually want to challenge some of the traditional ways.
Yes. Yeah, and where there's goodness and truth, that impacts us in a positive way. And when we are in a positive mindset, that allows us to influence others in a positive way as well, wherever that influence comes from.
Yeah, I'm thinking about just kind of in our neighborhood, in our community, seeing examples of, leadership lessons. This was a couple of years ago now, where there was a cell outage across, I think it might have been across North America, but there was just communication issues. So all of the point of sale systems went down, everything went down for that afternoon. And there's a coffee shop just down the street here that we all frequent. And when you went into that coffee shop, they couldn't process orders, and they're a cash-free environment. But they went, well, we serve coffee. I guess we'll just start giving it away. And they started giving that coffee away because they were so connected with why they existed as an organization. And there was another coffee shop, a larger chain, where they just had to shut everything down.
Wow.
Right, unless it was cash only, and the employees said, "Well, I've got no option here." And the leadership lesson that we talked lots about this, always talking about culture, is that clearly, by being connected with their purpose, their leader had created some safety. The leader wasn't even there; the employees just felt empowered to do that.
Interesting.
Right, so that was such a leadership lesson from us having coffee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can think about the benefits that were there. That again kind of validates these things are happening all around us.
Yeah, we can see in an example like that something that will instruct us, right?
Yeah.
Oh, people need to know that the most important thing is
Yeah.
the thing that we're doing, right?
Right.
And continuing to do that. And, in the case of that coffee shop, they might have won a few new customers that day, right?
Or retained them,
definitely
for sure.
loyalty from their
Yeah.
existing ones. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And I bet you some of those people came in and paid later when they could pay, right?
Maybe. Yeah, that's for sure. So here's a question though, something for us to think about. Maybe we can share this. Okay, so we there's great learning opportunities all around us every day. How do we capture them? What do we do with those things?
We ponder them in our hearts. No, I'm joking.
Okay, well, we do, but
Well, I do think it is. You're right. That is such a good question
Right.
because often, for myself, I reflect on them, I record them in my journal, but they often, in one way, they just stay kind of there. They stay
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
Other than, if there's the opportunity as opposed to creating the opportunity to
Yeah.
share them. I do think, though, those lessons impact how and shift how we show up. So there is an influence that does. But you're right. How do we gain from each other's experience and knowledge?
Yeah. Do you have an answer
well,
too,
I
Chris?
just two things I was going to say. I want to. Well, you share your thought, Eric, because I've got an observation here I wanted to share with you, but I don't want to derail the conversation. So what's your thoughts on what to do with that?
Well, for me, the only real way that something sinks in is when I talk about it
Sure.
and communicate about
Yep.
it to others or try to explain it. Try to explain the geese, right? The geese are flying, and then there's these ones in the back, and then a couple come back to join the ones in the back, and then as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking, oh, what does this mean for me? And honestly, the first way I was going to answer the question, Chris, when you asked it was, how do I do this podcast?
Right.
I mean, one of the things that is really helpful for me is just sitting down on a regular basis with other people to talk about what I'm learning about leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's a best practice in terms of learning. I think about even children, parents often have the hidden agenda of tell me what you learned at school today, because
Yeah.
as they're telling it back, they're consolidating their own learning and making sense of it and sharing it.
I was going to say share the story.
Share the story.
Share the story.
So one would say that's a wise practice, even beyond a best practice. There's something I recently heard from someone at a conference that talked about get rid of best practice, use wise practice because it's most
Yes.
relevant to your area. And that is how we share stories. It's a human thing. So I love it. Let's talk about it. I think that's the key. What I was going to ask you both is, how are you, even in the last 10 minutes, we've just been talking about these lessons we've observed from geese, from a coffee shop, from a book.
Yeah.
Are you feeling an uplift of energy? I am. I'm feeling
yeah.
inspired is the word I just wrote down.
Yeah, for sure.
What I'm also liking about this conversation is how we view the world around us shapes how we operate within it.
Yeah.
Right. And we're so attuned to just dialing into all of the negative. And not that there's not challenges out there. There absolutely are. But if we started going here, imagine we flipped it and said, what are some lessons from poor leadership? How would we be feeling right now?
Yeah.
Right?
Annoyed.
So part of it, I'm just thinking about how, looking for the good that's happening out there just can inspire us and then maybe help us deal with the challenges in a different way. I don't know, just a thought I wanted to share there.
Yeah, and the idea of what we focus our attention on grows.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you
So
focus
maybe
on
that's
the
a way
good,
to actually operationalize this, focus your attention on it, then we're more likely to watch that grow.
Nice. It's time for us to wrap up this podcast on leadership lessons from unlikely places. And I'm wondering if one of you has a quick summary for our listeners of something they can take away and think about or ask themselves today after this podcast.
I will say, and this came from, I'm just going to summarize what I heard from you both actually, is first of all, be on the lookout because there are opportunities to learn everywhere. In nature, in interaction, and like I said, in our schoolyards and in our coffee shops. But don't just leave it there. Write it down, process it, and share the story. Because I think once we share that story, we're way more likely to start to put that into operation. And if we aren't, perhaps the person who shared the story are. So that's a way to kind of take these great things we see and maybe honor them and ensure that they continue to be providing the service that they do. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks very much. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.
Looking for free resources, training, and consulting in the areas of leadership and workplace culture? Be sure to check out achievecenter.com. That's achieve, CENTRE.com.